So it's amazing where you can find stories, right? I mean, Character Trumps Credentials is great to trigger stories, but one of my favourite places is actually podcasts. The one I'm listening to at the moment is called Invisibilia. It's by NPR. And the two hosts essentially find things which are a bit hard to see but actually have effect on behaviour. And they start off with this nice little story about a scientist who brought in a whole group of lab rats, literally lab rats, and he then took each of those rats that were in their cages and he put labels on their cages. So he'd said things like one cage might be smart, another one was slow or fast, things, just different labels, stupid, terrible things like that. And then he got his PhD students in to come and run just normal tests, right, around how fast they could do a maze and intelligence tests and things like that. Well, it turned out that the ones who had the positive labels put on their cages actually did better. And you might be thinking, are they reading the labels? Well, no, they're not reading the labels. What they're doing is that the PhD students actually were holding and treating the animals differently depending on the labels. This idea that expectations that you have for other humans, other animals, really have an impact on their behaviour. I heard a nice little story. I'm going to give you sort of 3 stories today, so that's one little story. That's one of my favourite types of stories, by the way, is stories of scientific experiments. They're great because they give you the science plus, you could delve into the actual academic papers if you wanted that extra level of credibility. But it did remind me of this story, not in that podcast, but one I'd heard ages ago about a teacher who was, doing a high school class. New group of students, they give her the class list, she's looking down the names, and right next to her she goes, oh, they've also given me the IQs of these kids. And she went, oh my God, the IQs are extremely high, right? Anyway, she teaches the kids for the year, and they absolutely smash it out of the park. These kids do so well on their grades and all their assignments, etc. And then right at the end of the year, she discovers they weren't the IQs, they were their locker numbers. Again, expectations, right, have an enormous impact on outcome. So the last little story I tell you is actually from that podcast again. It was actually about a young fellow who was 4 years old, terrible tragedy, gets cancer of the eyes, and both his eyes had to be removed, put in ceramic eyes. And he was a real rambunctious little kid, loved climbing things, doing all those things. And instead of his mother holding him back and sort of saying, no, we've got to wrap you up in cotton wool to make sure you don't hurt yourself, she just let him do these things. Well, on his own, he taught himself a sort of echolocation technique, the same sort of thing that bats have, where they make a noise and it bounces off the things around them. From that information, he could tell, or they could tell, the size and shapes of things. Well, he was doing the same thing just by clicking his tongue. Well, by the age of 6, he could actually ride a bike through his neighbourhood, unaided, right? He'd got up all sorts of things, and to the point where, again, he was an independent young fellow who could just about do anything he wanted. They actually ran some neurological tests when he was an adult, and they discovered that the visual elements of his brain were lighting up pretty much the same as someone who had had a full sight. So he was getting this visual information, if you like, but not through the eyes. He was actually getting it through his ears. Anyway, I think this is fantastic. That's a nice story, again, to sort of talk about how parents, the expectations that you have of your children actually have a phenomenal impact on what they're able to do. Okay, guys, well, that's 3 very quick stories. I hope you can add them to your story repertoire. Go check out the podcast, which we'll have in the details below. And good luck. I hope you get some good value out of telling those stories. Bye for now.